Do you feel like your teacher, Chiba Sensei, followed an orthodox interpretation of Aikido as he understood it? Or do you think he knowingly introduced innovations?
Orthodox. Could you define what you mean by orthodox?
I guess a classic style of Aikido, or what would be considered classic, maybe the Nidai Doshu Kishomaru Sensei taught at Homba Dojo, or other people, or was it did he sort of follow this sort of a classic form, or did he take that and sort of knowingly start to add innovation to it?
He always added innovation to everything. He couldn't help himself. It was just he was profoundly creative in a way that couldn't be helped. But he respected orthodoxy tremendously, and he felt that creativity had to anchor itself to the orthodox. He was very adamant about having a system. He created a system when I was there. I'll never forget that. He had a whole spreadsheet of all the techniques and the different ranks and cues and the Jodan, Chudan, Gaidan, upper, middle, lower techniques. He created this whole thing, and he introduced it to us in, I believe I'm going to say 87 in summer camp in Berkeley. And Juba Noor and I were there, and he took us in the back room. He said, here, this is what I've done. He goes, and I regret that I've done this. Because when you put a rope around anything, you kill the life of it. So he had some sorrow and regret about doing it, but he knew it was very necessary. So he did it anyway. So he had a kind of a very, very big vision of understanding. He didn't lean on orthodoxy, but he knew that it was kind of necessary, but he saw the dangers of it. He always used to say, there's different styles of Aikido and different types of Aikido, and they're all great, but our style is the quote unquote martial style, in that the techniques have have martial relevance as their backbone, as a base to them, as opposed to some that are don't have that consideration that strongly. And he listed, Saito Sensei himself and a few others in that arena. He told me when I went to Japan, he said, okay, go learn everything you can from everybody and keep a really open mind. And if you see something you don't like, say thank you, no matter what, and you'll get something from it. Just say thank you. He said, in Doshu's Aikido, he says, pay attention to Doshu's Aikido, Dosu Kisamaru Sensei's Aikido. Hidden in it is martial arts. It's it's covered up for the purpose of everybody else, but it has the profound substance of real martial arts in it. That was how he said it, actually. It was kind of cool. Yeah, like it's housed in a way that the masses can get, but within it is the essence of martial arts. He told me that.
What was Chiba Sensei's background and, outside of the dojo? And did this influence his personal practice or teaching?
Background, what do you mean? Could you explain what you mean by background?
Sure. Did Chiba Sensei have another job, or did he have interests that were outside of the dojo that didn't include Aikido? And did those activities influence his personal practice or teaching?
Well, the way he was, that's what I actually feel so blessed about, is to have connected with him, is everything was Aikido to him. So whatever he did, he considered Aikido. If I had a job, he's like, you're not just doing, out there working in construction. He goes, this is Keisa. It's how you train your body. This is awareness. He'd always tell me stuff like that. Fishing, he loved to fish. We used to fish a lot together, actually. That was kind of our shared thing. And the whole sensitivity of it, he loved that part of it. But he considered, his total filter for his life was taking his Aikido up. So everything he did, it had that center to it. And I remember him kind of hitting that point home with me a couple of times, that like, look, you have to establish a center. You have to have a center. Then you can do anything you want. And then everything will feed into that center, but you have to have it. And that was kind of something that struck me and stayed with me. And even now I have stayed with me. And I consider a great blessing, to have somebody that, because men, you need a life focus and something that, like, in my own heart, like, I have to feel like my life is living for something other than what? A bigger house, a newer car, whatever the heck it is, which is not wrong in any manner. But it has to be for something else. And the sense of training that he had, that all life was training, that was absolute. So that he had that feel to him about everything. He always seemed to be just studying people. He was a great people studier in how they received his teaching. But I have to say, he was pretty one-track guy. Like, even from my standards, like I know I'm not as one-tracked as he was. He's incredibly one-track, like in that way, very focused.
One question I want to ask, this is actually an additional question that I'm popping here in the middle, but I know that Chiba Sensei and Kanai Mitsunari Sensei were very, very close. They spent time when they were younger. They spent time at Hombu Dojo together, and obviously a lot of time here in the US together. This is a focus mostly on Chiba Sensei, this interview, but during your time with Chiba Sensei, did you interact at all with Kanai Sensei, and or did Chiba Sensei ever talk about Kanai Sensei? Is there anything any stories or other things you could relay regarding Kanai Sensei?
The only thing I can tell you is he really, really loved Kanai Sensei. I could feel that they were like, those buddies from the furthest place back, that he just loved him. And he was not only loved him, but was kind of fascinated with his character and way of doing things. He said he's this very mysterious person who he's just continuously, like he just had this strong friendship with him. Personally, I thought Kanai Sensei was awesome. I thought he was a super cool guy, and I'm just a great Budo teacher. And he held some sort of a spirit about him that if you've rubbed elbows with him and had a class with him, and I was blessed that he accepted an invitation. He taught a seminar at my dojo in Connecticut when I was running it there. He had a certain energy about him that just kind of lifted you up. He just had something. I can't even explain what it was. His techniques were very different, yes, but like I could see that he had mastered this system of his. Probably one of the most generous people I've ever met, too. I don't have a ton of history. I mean, he just said he'd known Kanai Sensei from when he was a kid, and they kind of grew up together on the streets of Tokyo. And that was kind of it, that they had their whole teenager, boyhood, young man thing together. But the sense of connection was very profound, and respect too.
I've heard a teacher say, somebody that I trained with, that Aikido is not a Japanese martial art. It is a martial art from Japan. And so my question is, did your teacher connect Aikido practice to Japanese culture, or think it expressed anything that was essentially Japanese? Or do you think that the country of origin wasn't relevant to daily practice at all?
When I first got to San Diego back in 4. What I loved about Chiba Sensei was that he had this persona of being a coach, and he was coaching you in Aikido, and that was that. Like he didn't waste his time with any extraneous nonsense at all. Like, who's senpai, who's kohai, keeping track of that? No, none at all. One bow in, do your thing, one bow, get out, that's it. I mean, I was surprised sometimes to not see him with a clipboard and a whistle, like he had that kind of energy about him. And he just kind of sit there on the benches even, and just kind of yell at you to get you to do the right thing. So his sense of hardcore coaching was absolute. And that's honestly what attracted him to me in the first place a lot. And Chba was there, and it was very like nothing, no extra anything. And this is it. So as he got older and his organization grew, I don't know what his thinking was entirely, but there was a lot more Japanese-ish stuff that was going on around. Senpai Kohai got enforced, all that kind of stuff that in the beginning, I know for a fact, he just considered it irrelevant. When I was first there, it was very interesting. One of the guys had taught a class in summer camp, and he had called up in summer camp, in the big public camp, somebody else who was his senpai as ukemi, which is, as you know, in Japan, that's completely wrong. But nobody knew. Why would we? We were just in this big mosh pit of training. Just shut up, get on the mat and train. I don't care who's senior or not. And he held a big meeting. He asked every student there, he said, if you had a person who was your senior, would you use them for Kemi or the person below you? And almost everybody said, well, I'd use the senior. Why? Because they can do it better. Oh my God. Except me, because I've been around Nakazono Sensei, whose sense of order and Japanese culture was much, much, much stronger. So I did know the difference. And I said, oh no, I wouldn't do that. He said, why? He goes, well, you just don't do that. It's just not right. Why? It's just the order. But he didn't teach that at all. That just came in later. Now, towards the end, by the time he was in Fairmont Dojo, he kind of was riding this line between really strongly saying, I'm Japanese and this is Japanese, and the background of this is Japanese. And you darn well better realize that. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. And the whole relationship of uke-nage, like, come on, man. That's Japanese language. They're always feeling each other out, sussing each other out. That's uke-nage right there. So he struggled with it a little bit, kind of like any of those dichotomies. I do know that. I know that he knew that he was teaching Aikido to Americans, and there's a lot that they couldn't get. But at the same time, he really did demand that there was a lot of, how should we say, observation of the forms as he knew them, which is Japanese. But he was clear about saying these are just forms for your awareness to cultivate something, some awareness to train yourselves within. And it's not the final answer. He was not dumb on that. He had a much broader view than saying, I'm Japanese, it has to be this way. Not at all. So it was a hard line to ride. And I know he struggled with it greatly, but he was very much about attempting and working in that to unify those two things. I hope that answers your question.
If you could talk a little bit about your personal interactions with Chiba Sensei and relate any memorable stories and anything that you might have learned from these stories, things that you did with him, or things that happened either in the dojo, outside of the dojo, it doesn't matter, but anything that you thought was an interesting story.
When I first got to San Diego, I had a good teacher as Nakazono Sensei, and he was very, very a fantastic teacher, but it was his own system. So I came to Chiba Sensei, and I was practicing for a couple of months, and I remember we were doing Futari Dori, and I was kind of holding on lackadaisically, and he screamed at me. He said, you have all this potential, but you're arrogant. And he just like tore me a new one, pounded the fist in. And of course, Chba was there, and Chba's such a sweet guy. He's like, another day in the office, I thought about it afterwards. I said, oh, okay, I get it. What I was doing is I was trying to add what he's giving me to what I already know. And that's the wrong way to go about it. I had to show up and say, I'm going to do this 100% like I've never seen Aikido before. Never been on the mat. Never even put on a gi, basically. I mean, okay, you put on a gi, but you literally, you approach it as a completely different art, because his training system, his systemization was so profoundly specific. You couldn't go in there and say, oh, I have something. No. You ain't got nothing. There's nothing you have. You just show up and you open your eyes and you do it. Now, from there, part of it, just hanging on to him. Just for example, you don't hang on to Chiba Sensei's hand. It's coming right back at you. That's just the way it goes. That never happened before, but that was the kind of teacher he was. So there was that empty your cup thing. And that was something that was really, really, I think that set the tone for me. Just apprenticing there and being there was like, you couldn't do it any other way. And there's a huge difference, a massive difference between 99% emptying your cup and 100. It actually has to be 100. And that's something that people don't realize. And I see that a lot. You're not going to get something out of a system or a teacher like that if you don't have that 100%. Okay, we're going to do this. I have no idea. I'm going to take whatever you say and whatever you're doing and just do it. Then it became creative immediately. And I felt like I was growing. I remember we used to fish a lot. And so we went fishing one time to Heron Lake. And it was part of a woman's camp. And they sent him fishing, and they said, okay, Yahe, you go be Otomo, bag carrier, which is massively stressful, but it's just part of the deal. So we went and hung out in this cabin, and we fished together, and we caught some trout, and it was great. But there's some guys next to us were just, you know, regular New Mexico guys. And all they did all day was just continuously trying to keep this PG or so. I guess the word ball bust would be the word for it, on each other, just capping on each other really, really hard. And so Chiba Sensei had a delightful time listening to that. He said, there's so much love in the way they relate to each other. I said, yes, sir, that's true. But part of their thing, so he really enjoyed them. When they catch carp, they throw it up on the bank and they kick it like a football, which he found very disrespectful. But he said, well, that's just this culture here. And that's the way it goes. But there was one huge carp. I mean, it had to be over 10 pounds. So I picked it up. I said, hey, Sensei, I think we caught this one, didn't we? And he goes, oh, yeah. So we took it back, and there was some sort of a big party afterwards. And we took it back, and we just stuck with the story. You know, both of us completely lied. You know, it was just, oh, my God, I've never seen a fish that big. He's like, oh, who caught it? Well, Sensei did, of course. You know, yeah, I had to dive in to pull it up. Oh, yeah, you know, so we just went with that. That was a funny, that was a very fun trip. Let's see, one more, I guess, would be the time I was in Sunderland with him at that big demonstration. I think there's some video out there probably, but we had all this stuff going on, and he did this long demonstration. It finished with Joe, and he hit me in the nose, and he got bloody nose. And I felt horrible for getting a bloody nose, because I'm like, I was there to like let him express his art. That's what you're always there to do, is to make yourself available for that. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, Sensei, I'm doing okay. This is no problem. He goes, oh, no. These Brits, they don't like blood. You can't do that. And he walked off. But I actually think that he wanted to finish it that way because he had a certain flair for the dramatic. And I'll say this without being too specific. He has done that multiple times in demos that I've been around him. I'm being like, oh, he'll just kind of just make a big scene because he doesn't want to do it or cause some blood to happen. Very much on purpose. So that was part of his personality. He used drama kind of like, you know, sauce on food. I'll just say that.
Do you think that Chiba Sensei was particularly concerned with etiquette as it relates to the Bugei? And if so, can you please discuss the most important parts of etiquette as transmitted by your teacher?
That's a tough question. That goes right back to the 1-2 ago, with about the traditions and the Japanese-ness. No. Here's the God's honest truth. Chiba Sensei didn't care about etiquette much at all. He used things like etiquette as ways to wake us up. He would say, "You forgot to do this. You forgot to do that," as a ways to get on our cases and get us to wake up. He absolutely hated rote etiquette, and he hated rote anything. He just didn't do it. He found it nonsense. He found it the opposite of where he was trying to go. He would use things like, you didn't put the dish right where, you know, there, and then scream at us when he had never told us that before. But he'd make up little rules and just start throwing around at us just to kind of keep us on edge. A big thing with his is to make your uchideshi suffer a lot, keep him on edge, keep him exhausted, strung out, all that stuff. That was part of his job. No, God bless him for it, but that was what he did. I never got the feeling that he was like, this has to be this way. I'm sure there's other people who will say otherwise, but I think mostly he just used that stuff kind of for his own purpose as teaching tools. That's the truth. And I knew him really, really well. So
can you, as a follow-up to that, did you ever personally make mistakes in etiquette, and were you corrected, and how were you corrected by Chiba Sensei?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was teeing off on me constantly. You kidding me? That same Sunderland trip, we were somewhere or other, and I'd gotten a beer and I'd given it to him, and then he was sitting and talking to one of his karate friends, Mr. Harada Sensei, I believe. But I didn't give Harada Sensei a beer before I had one. He screamed at me. He's like, "You have a beer before Harada Sensei?" And I was like, ugh, and I felt like that big, you know, and, you know, but honestly, knowing the man, he wasn't doing it for that reason. He was doing it to say, hey, Yahe, there's some order in this world. Pay attention to it. Don't be lost in your own shtick, because I tend to do that, even still. And my wife's laughing, but but there's an order, and there's certain ways that things are done. But I don't think he ever considered that this is the only way or this is the best way. But it was a very like, it's weird. You could even feel the love behind it then. It wasn't like he was just out there to punish me. He was rough with it, but he was there to say, hey, wake up. There's an order. There's other people around. There's certain ways that things are done. And he's like, this is how it's done here. Another culture, another place, it could be done entirely different. And there was always that energy to it. I mean, it was this constant thing at the dinner table where, like, you got to pour wine for this person and filling the other person's cup. And I know he was sort of, he saw it as necessary, but I could feel that he thought it was kind of stupid, and that he thought that he created kind of a big idiotic monster by making everybody very automatic. Oh, you have to fill Sensei's cup. You know, I could tell that he thought it was kind of dumb, but his whole purpose was to get everybody kind of tuned up and awake. He'd scream at you if you didn't put the dishes away, and if you didn't, you know, dry them off completely. If he noticed that, again, he'd yell at you. Why? Pay attention, do things thoroughly, stay in the here and now, that kind of thing. Very, very important to him. I remember one time Yasuno Sensei visited us. It was back in that was back in the old 4th Ave dojo, and he taught a class. It was fantastic. I'd never seen anybody from Hambu, but I was like, wow, Yasuno Sensei, so great. And it was really fun. And he has this nice energy. And afterwards we had this big picture. I and somebody else who hadn't been there very long were just sitting next to Yasuno Sensei. And that's not how it goes. There's supposed to be an order. You get the sensei there, then you get the next highest, the next highest. You know how it goes out, but there wasn't any big Aikido culture. And to his, what I consider his credit, he never enforced dogmatic rules. And he was taking a picture, and he looked through the lens. He goes, what are you guys doing? Yahe, here in the back. Chba, come on, you should know for this situation. But it was clear he didn't know. So he had to, like, redirect us into place. One good one was, you know how in New Year's, I'm sure you know, Andrew, there's the mochi making thing. We make mochi, and you put it on the kamiza, and it's supposed to sit there for a certain number of days. But I was Uchideshi there, and he put it on the kamiza, and the dojo was closed for a week, and it was sitting there getting mold spots. So I ate it. I put it in soup. He came down. He said, what happened to the mochi? I said, I ate it. He's like, you what? He was like so mad at me, but he was like, he's like choking back a giggle at the same time. He's like, in my country, that was a famous, in my country, oh, that would be it. You'd be out. But coming from a man who killed O-sensei's dog, he couldn't really come down on me too hard. So I could tell he found it, like, kind of humorous inside, but he did tee off on me pretty good.
I would love to go to sort of a little bit, something similar to that, but talking about Chiba Sensei becoming angry, and, different teachers, some teachers become angry, some don't, but did he become angry, and what triggered his anger? Or were there any things that were known to anger him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was a pretty moody guy, but what was so cool about him was that he never he never censored himself. That was what was so cool, is you always get a true read on him. And if he's mad at you and just kind of coming at you, you have to kind of deal with it. And here, Shane's getting me fixed up. And but he, honestly, the biggest thing with him is a lack of connection and a lack of a live spontaneity. Hey, think about it. Martial arts like Aikido, it's all a kata. We don't do free-form sparring and that stuff, because then you're not doing Budo. You're doing sport fighting, which is great and highly respectable, but it's not Budo. Budo's got a form to it, but you can just get dull in the form. So if you're going up to do something to him, like grab him, and you think, oh, he's going to do this, and you have any kind of an idea, he'd immediately feel it. He either switch it or he'd smack you in the head or something, and scream at you, and then you go from there. So his whole thing was to constantly break down your conception. So you can see what I mean about him being this person who had a clear view of what Budo is. Don't make it rote, don't make it dead, keep it alive. And when people would withdraw from that, he would get very angry. That's true. He'd get really mad about that. That was really the only sin with him, if I'm honest, I think, is it's just not be there. He'd take women, children, men, and that was what's so cool about him. I'll tell you that straight up. That man was not sexist one bit. No. And the Japanese are notorious for having some issues, we should say, with that. He was not. If you're a woman or a man, he did not care. Whatever the energy coming towards him, he'd meet you right there. And he would ring some of these women out, like, but always at their level, wherever they were. But he'd give them everything he had. He was always commitment, manos to manos with him. And I respect him like beyond even like a lot of Caucasian men on that. He's really good. But it was that lack of contact that would get him mad. Yeah, absolutely. One way or the other.
The last question I want to ask you before we finish is, was there one thing that you think that your teacher was trying to transmit to you?
Have a path and don't be afraid. There you go.
Great. Thank you very much, Sensei. It was fantastic talking with you.